I'm going to hit you right away with an icebreaker. Is this the first year that LeBron James is not the best player on his team?
Is this the first year? I mean, it finally should be. To be honest with you, it finally should be. It's about damn time. It should honestly after they won the bubble chip. I think it should have transitioned to AD's team, but he could never stay healthy. And I think LeBron had to do too much. Plus, I mean, don't get me wrong, LeBron was still great, but I think the greatness, I think that they could have pushed it further if AD was more the guy, and he was the second guy that just cleaned up everything. You know what I mean? But I think like this year watching them play, and I've said this on my previous podcast. I think this year watching them play, or especially after the trade deadline, and then they got all the players back, like D'Angelo Russell and Vanderbilt and Hachimura and all these guys. Like I actually enjoyed watching them play because I'm not a Lakers fan. And I enjoyed watching them play because they
Mhm.
they were like the sum of all parts. Even though AD and LeBron are like the bigger cogs in the wheel, but they worked together. Everybody had a chance to run sets and break down plays, and some nights it was LeBron, some nights it was AD, some nights it was Reeves, some nights it was Hachimura, and I love how they played. So the fact that they signed everybody back, it's a good thing. But it all depends on AD's health. If AD's healthy, then yeah, I think he should be the best player. LeBron's going in the year 21. Why does he still want to be like he's already established himself in the annals of history? Like at this
Yes.
stage. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yes or no, Calvin? You got to commit.
I gave you the roundabout answer. I know. Um, um, I would say yes, but honestly, it's basically based on if AD's healthy.
I would say this is the last year. Based on what I saw before, this is the last year you can easily say, oh, he's the best player on their team.
hmm
We'll see what happens. But yeah, like you said, this is what, year 20?
21.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So, what I want to talk about, what we were messaging about earlier today, 5 things that you took from free agency. So, I'm going to put a little twist on it. It can be exciting, intriguing, or confusing. Those are the 3 things I took away. I was either something where I was like, oh, that's exciting, or I was kind of like, no, that could work, or I was just like, why would you do that?
Yeah,
So I've got my list here.
I'm gonna
I don't know.
freestyle this list because I
Oh,
I
wow. All
I- I'm
right.
gonna
Okay.
freestyle this one. So I
I've
think you
done
should
this
lead
to
this,
you
and I'm
before.
sorry.
I've done this to you before.
you have, and now karma comes back right in your face.
I'm going to start with how everybody's been talking about how the Lakers won free agency. And I'm going to piggyback that to say that I think they did very well based on how they finished the season and what they've added to improve. I really like the signing of D'Angelo Russell at a reduced rate, bringing in Gabe Vincent, who showed he could be a playoff performer and perform in that scenario that they are hoping to be in deep in the postseason,
Yeah,
and bringing all their guys back, especially Austin Reeves, who I feel bad for because you and I talked 2 weeks ago on your past
my podcast. Yeah.
podcast saying he was an $80 million guy, and the Lakers scared everybody off.
I don't know how they did it, and you know what? It's actually great for them. But I think even on my podcast, I mentioned I think it's actually pretty good for Reeves. I think Reeves, yeah, he's at a reduced rate, but he's in Los Angeles. Like the last
Yep.
podcast I just recorded, one of my guests, he stated that he was in LA just last week, and he was like, Reeves is already all over billboards. He's gonna make that money back up. So if the Lakers are winning, he's gonna make it back.
Yeah, but he could have made more.
Yeah, but it would have been in a market that's not Los Angeles.
But
And then
LA would have matched.
would they have?
Oh, they didn't have a choice.
Well, I guess it depends on because I don't have let me pull my phone up, but I don't have their cap space on what it looks like. But that's also playing a part. That's right. That's wreaking havoc on this offseason too, right? So,
It would have meant that they couldn't maybe re-sign D'Angelo Russell or one of the other guys.
mhm,
Maybe they don't end up with Gabe Vincent.
yeah,
They did have to keep Reeves, but I'm just messing around. It is what it is. That's my line for this week. It is what it is, and he's on their roster, and like it or lump it, that's the money he got, and he's got to deal with it. But I
it is
mean,
what it is. It is
the
what it
guy's
is.
undrafted, just
I
signed a
know.
4-year, $52 million deal.
I know.
So
It is what it is. Shout out to Cameron and Mace. I would say, I, I would say I guess my number one would be that I don't understand what the Pacers are doing. They got me a little confused because they drafted, is it Jerace Walker?
yeah, have you
Um,
seen him play?
I mean, he's pretty good, but I'm kind of like, how many forwards do you have? Like power forwards do you have? I know it's about talent. You're just trying to accumulate as much talent as possible. So, and they're young, so I understand that. But then why do you sign Bruce Brown to $22 million a year? Like if you're like a playoff contender and you want to add more vets and somebody that can maybe boost you up where you can maybe get it to the conference finals, then signing Bruce Brown to that deal, great. You didn't make the playoffs, so is Bruce Brown gonna for sure guarantee you an 8 seed? You know what I mean? Like to me, I like for him, it's great for him, especially coming off a championship. Like you wish you would have stayed in Denver and kind of run it back, but for that kind of money, I mean, they're not gonna match that, for him to come off the bench. Like, does that mean he starts? And in Indiana, does that mean he starts now? It doesn't make any sense to me. That one I was confused by.
The deal, what the Pacers are doing, or the Bruce Brown signing?
Both the Pacers, what the Pacers are doing, but also the Bruce Brown signing. Happy for Bruce Brown though. Like, get your money, but I don't understand what the young guys that they have. Like, why did they sign him to that amount of money? And now, mind you,
Well,
the people don't realize too. It's really like a 1 year deal.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really a 1 year deal. So he can come back to this table next year if maybe secure more long term money if they don't take up the team option. But it's just a weird signing because I'm like, by doing this, where's your team exactly going? Like, are you shooting for the playoffs now? And if you are, how high do you think you're gonna go? Like the East is good now, and you're young. You're not the most healthy team. Where is this going? Like, is that going to cut into Betty Matherin's minutes or like
Mm,
stats? I don't want to see that on a Montreal level, and just the fact that he's a really good young player. Why?
yeah.
It didn't make any sense to me.
I think he probably fits in the same way he did in Denver as being multi-positional, right?
Hmm.
He's probably their Swiss Army knife. They signed Obi Toppin as probably either their starting four or their backup four, whatever they decide to do with Jarris Walker. They were starting Aaron Neesmith at the four
Yeah.
sometimes. So I understand a little bit more what they're trying to do, especially if Miles Turner can continue to play that stretch five role.
Hmm.
Still, I have to see what comes of the other teams. Like what we still got a little bit to happen with Philly. We've heard rumblings of Zach LaVine in Chicago.
Yeah.
What happens with Dame. That those things are still looming. So it's for the Pacers. I think it's hard to judge the final outcome till then. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And they still
And
have the Pacers still have Buddy Hield too.
I know that's what I mean. Like that's what I'm saying. Like it doesn't make sense. You have Halliburton, Heel, and Matherman, and you're bringing him on for 22 mil. Like, did you really
Well,
need Bruce Brown?
I think it was a good cap spend,
Yeah, I guess they had
right?
to spend some more money. So I get that, but it's still, I don't know. I just, it didn't make sense to me. Because he's, like I said again, is he coming off the bench? Like, is one of those, is
Yeah.
Heald or Matherin getting moved? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, like I said, ultimately it's a 1 year deal. So maybe he's okay with doing it and coming off the bench for this year and then, going back to the table next year. I,
Yeah.
it just sucks because I really wish he stayed in Denver because I liked him in that role. Like, and that's what kind of put them over the top this
You
year.
know who else it sucks for? Denver.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, it does.
Because
It,
they didn't, they were one of the two teams that I looked at that did nothing, that I thought, well, you couldn't afford to do nothing. All you did was, like, Toronto and Denver, to me, did not improve over the offseason.
yeah,
Toronto, we know there's a lot of things looming, but Denver, they lost Jeff Green, they lost Bruce Brown. Are you really hoping that Zeke Naji and Christian Braun are really going to step in and fill those
for
holes?
those roles, yeah. I mean, and Brown was good though. He did play well in the
Yeah,
playoffs. He did, so and he's
but he doesn't
cheaper, right?
play this. He's cheaper, but he doesn't have the ball handling point guard role, backup PG role that Brown can play.
Yeah,
So that
and
was one to me that was confusing.
but I think the most they could have offered Brown was I think like the mid level exception, which is 7.5
Yes.
million. So if you're Bruce Brown, yeah, you probably didn't want to leave, but
Yeah.
7 versus 22 or potentially 45. Like I
Yeah.
get it, I get it, but it's just like with players like Bruce Brown, like you'd like to see when guys finally like they not the light switch goes on, but they finally hit that stride where they're on the right team, they're in the right
Mhm.
system, everything fits perfect. So you're in professional sports, and he's on a superstar, so he's got to get as much money as he can. But it's like you wish sometimes these guys stay in these places only because the longer they play, the more money they're going to make later because of the system that they've benefited from, right? So that's
Yeah,
the only part of it that's bad.
for sure. I would have loved to have seen him stay there. At the same time, he is a Swiss Army knife type player that can slide into a lot of teams and
Positions,
really
yeah,
help them win. Right?
yeah,
He's we've seen in his career he's multi positional. He started out as a point guard, the backup point guard in Detroit. And then, a couple of years later, he's the four man in Brooklyn.
I
And
know.
then he's your backup everything in Denver.
In Denver,
So that was that one I understood but didn't understand. I think
yeah.
there's more to come because they have TJ McConnell as their backup.
I know. Right.
So is there a deal coming that has TJ McConnell and Buddy Hield in it?
There has to be. There has to be because it isn't like if they go into the season with this roster, you're literally like, what are they doing? It doesn't make any sense for a team that's their core is young outside of Heald, and Heald's not that old, but their core is young. Like the future is Matherin and especially Halliburton. They just signed him to, the maximum rookie maximum contract.
Yeah.
So that second contract 260 over 5. Like this is their team, so just build properly. And I'm not saying he doesn't help with that, but it's just to sign into that money to basically be coming off the bench. I'm just
But
a little
for
confused by it.
but for Halliburton to make the 260, doesn't he, the supermax has to kick in, like he has to get an all NBA?
For him to get the 260, yeah, I think
Yeah.
he has to make either one of the All NBA teams or he has to be starting in the All Star game. So it's within one of the two.
Yeah. So right now the deal I think is set at 5 at 205. And
Yeah,
then if he hits that, then
man, it's like
it goes,
Powerball, Lotto Max money, man. Jeez, every year. Can
yeah.
you imagine every year you're whatever the Lotto Max is, you're like that's my annual salary. You're like somebody's paying $5 every Friday to sign off of what you get every year. You're just like, whatever.
I'll take it. Okay, we're me
It's your
now?
turn now. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the the fascination with retaining the asset. How many guys just re-signed? We
Mm,
just talked about Tyrese Halliburton. How many guys did you think could move that didn't move? Kyle Kuzma goes back to Washington.
yeah.
I guess somebody's got to get paid there. Jeremy Grant back to Portland. It felt like there wasn't a lot of movement. Reeves, the LA brings back all their guys. Miami lost two, but everybody else, it felt like, was bringing their guys back. And there wasn't a lot of movement.
Mhm.
There's some small deals that I really like,
Right.
but there wasn't as much of the big money or mid level money, the $20 million money moving around.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because, and the way the cap is now, I think that the cap, there's a few things hanging over this free agency season so far, which is like my list is going to be a little funky because it's some free agents and some players who haven't moved that's affecting free agency because that's what the climate is right now, right? Between the cap and between certain players not being moved, it's kind of messing with free agency, right? And I
Oh,
mean the free agency class wasn't strong to begin with this year anyway. Like if you look at the list, it wasn't like next year and next couple of years is going to be better, but this year wasn't a strong year, right? So the
well, and
players that are, so go ahead.
you didn't have a lot of teams with a ton of cap space. Like
That
who
part,
are you? There was Houston, and then everybody else kind of had like there were probably 7 or 8 teams,
yeah.
and not teams that you were sitting there going, man, those guys are going to be players. Like how many people are lining up to go play for the Pistons?
You
You
don't
know what
want
I
to
mean?
play in Detroit. You don't want to see Windsor on the off days. That doesn't sound appealing to you.
Scenic Windsor.
But yeah, you're right though, and I think that also plays a part. And I think everybody's scared of that second apron tax threshold, right? Everybody's afraid of that because you lose picks, you lose, the ability to sign like a mid level guy, a buyout guy. You go over that, you're losing so much options, and especially if you're a team that's on the cusp of being like a serious playoff contender or finals contender, you're petrified of hitting that if you want to if you want like have flexibility, going into next season or at least halfway through the season, right? So you like that's the part that makes it tough.
I think that's having an impact on the Dame trade as well.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
Um,
you're
so
looking
go
at a
ahead.
guy who's going to make 63 million at 36 years old.
I know.
That's a big chunk of your cap, and you have to be a spend money team. And there's only a handful of those. You know, Miami is about winning, and if they got to plunge into the cap to do it, that's a deal that they would probably do. You know,
Yeah,
there's how many teams are the Clippers? Maybe another one.
yeah.
Who
But
else really
but you
wastes money?
but you know what?
I mean,
Historically, though, Miami doesn't like to hit the luxury tax. Like they usually try to keep that money in pocket,
yes.
and then too with the pandemic, just listen to the certain podcasts. Like with the pandemic happening, Mickey Arison, because his main business is the Carnival Cruise Lines,
Mhm.
and that took a major hit during COVID, right? So they don't like so if he wasn't going into luxury tax before that happened. So now that he's lost like billions of dollars, he absolutely is not trying to go over that unless it's absolutely mandatory. And if so, it's like maybe they'll do it for Lillard. We'll see. But like even when LeBron and Bosch and the Heatles were there, they weren't going over the luxury tax by much, if at all, even back in those times, right? So historically,
Well,
they're not a team that really does that.
and the payoff was there in one, the championships and the revenue that comes from that
For
and the
sure.
extra playoff games
For
and all
sure.
of that.
For sure.
But yeah, I think the impact, we talked about this on your pod, the impact of the new salary cap really had people going, let's create some stability. And I think that's why you're seeing all these rookie extensions coming along, you know,
Yeah.
Desmond Bain and LaMelo Ball. And there was one more that escapes me right
Yeah.
now.
Anthony Edwards.
Anthony,
Anthony.
yeah,
Yeah.
talk about confusing. Minnesota's at the top of my list. Um, but I think that the salary cap is forcing people to say, let's retain our assets, create some salary stability of who's going to be on our roster,
Right.
and then let the rest play out. You know, now all these guys, the mid level, you know, I don't think there was a ton of overspending.
No. No. And I think that's the part where like the salary cap, like I said, we touched on this earlier, but I think that's a very and I don't think people are realizing how important this new deal is, right? Among like for the CBA. Like I don't think people realize how this is gonna have such a dramatic impact on how players are signed. And even those mid-level guys, the money's not the same. Like the Austin Reeves thing is a that's a point of interest for that, right? Because 2 years ago, he probably would have signed for 80, 90, $100 million. This year it's 54. And so that tells me there probably wasn't a lot of teams that was like, I don't know if we're going to spend much more than that for him. We'd like to, but like, is he worth the cap hit 2 years into the league? Like, we don't know what he is. Like, can we trust that we're going to give him $95 million over 3 or 4 years, and
Yeah.
he's going to live up to that? He played good for like half the season, or like a little more than half the season, or whatever, right? So like, could we trust him with 90 mil at this stage? It's like, we know he's going to be a good player. He's a solid player, but like, for that price, you want to know that you're probably getting like value on that, which means like he's making an all-star game, at that point. And that kind of like, not as a steal now. If he's making 95 million, he
Mhm.
makes an all-star game or two. That's a steal now, but it's not a guarantee, right?
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
You want to hear my second free agency thing that I actually will I'm actually happy for him, but it sucks for the local team is Van Vliet's contract. I'm, I'm
It was
actually I'm actually happy for the guy. I'm happy for him.
it's
You know
it's
what?
on
And
my list too.
yeah, and you know what? It's because, again, he's not a superstar. He's an all-star type point guard. Like, he's on that level where like maybe every year or every other year he could make an all-star game depending on how things go.
Mhm.
It's not a guarantee though, but he's like a high at the very worst, he's a high level role player, right?
Mhm.
So, his last contract, what did he get? Like 85 million. He made an all-star game. He got a ring with the Raptors. He developed from the G League. There's an undrafted
Yeah.
player. Yeah, it would have been nice for him to, I know he was talking about this recently on a podcast too. Where he's talking about, like, as much as he wanted to stay, he figure, a change is good, but when you're getting $130 million or $43 million a year in a tax free state in comparison to the taxes in Ontario, change is good. Change is good.
It's crazy the deal they offered him. Only 2 years guaranteed of the three,
Right.
but it's still 2 years at 84 mil.
You got to take that.
Yeah, nobody's gonna go. You know what? I'm gonna think twice about that.
Yeah. You got to take that. And Houston's a mismatched team, but if you trust Ime Udoka's coaching, then they're more on the upswing, right? And a guy like him kind of solidifies that process for them to be on the upswing. They got so many young guys; they need guidance, and he's going to definitely help
Yeah,
with that. You know?
I think it's a scenario where some people I've talked to have thought, "Wow, that's a huge overpay." I said, one, Houston had to spend to get to the bottom of the cap.
Yeah,
And two, they got exactly what they needed. They needed veterans who could guide their guys. They got Jeff Green, they got Dylan Brooks. Now they've got a little bit of attitude, they've got experience. And none of those deals, like none of Jeff Green's 16 million is guaranteed.
mm,
Zero.
right.
So it's kind of what's what's the worst that's going to turn out? I think they signed Jake Lonsdale too.
Yeah, they signed him too. Yeah,
Only 1 year guaranteed. So
yeah,
they retain cap flexibility and for Fred, good for him. He's
yeah.
what? He's a 5'10" guard who's 29 years old. Get
And he
that
was
money.
already slowly breaking down. He
Yeah.
was slowly already breaking down, and I mean, I think he still has some years and some juice left in those legs. I don't think he's finished, obviously, but even after the 2 years, like, say, Houston, doesn't give him that, they don't exercise that team option, he can still go get another, decent size or
Yeah.
good size contract. So it's a great deal for him. It's a great deal for
Great.
him. If he decides to stay there, if he decides to maybe chase the second ring and play with a team that needs that guard, to maybe push them over the top. You know, who knows what the cap will be in 2 years, but if he's got some flexibility too. I don't think it's a bad deal. Like, if they don't take it, even if they exercise the team option, he's 32 years old. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, he's gonna sign a good contract, but you're
Well,
pocketing
even,
like state tax like that. It's so huge, man. Like, people don't realize how much money you save when you're a team. Then you're in a tax free state. You save, like, you just keep some extra millions in your pocket, man. And the
well
property's
he
cheaper too. The housing. Like it's all that you consider all of that too. He's got a family. You got a big ass house, and you're
Have you,
probably paying a mansion for like 500,000. Like
have you
it's
been looking at your mortgage statements living in the GTA? Is that what's got you on this? Don't do that. It's bad for your health.
you're looking at you. Yeah, I'm sure he's got a beautiful place here, and it's like this is worth 8 million. Like what the hell's going on here? You know, so but I think for him too, because he's won a chip, especially because he's won a chip and he's got an all-star berth. Like right now, if a team's offering you big money, you got to get it. So I'm happy for him in that case. I am.
100%. 100%. Okay, we're back at me. We're on number three here.
Yeah, you're got this is your third one now.
I'm going to go with something that I find really, really confusing, which is why does Minnesota have four centers on their roster?
Well, because they think it's the '90s, and they're thinking at some point, maybe David Robinson and Tim Duncan are coming back. So you got to be prepared for that.
Do they need all 24 fouls for the Joker? Is that what it is?
Yes. The answer is yes.
So just to clarify, they already had Rudy Gobert and Towns on the roster. They re-signed Naz Reid. Then they signed Luke Garza to a two-way deal.
Mm-hmm.
So now they have four centers. I watched Luke Garza play last year, not on purpose, just because there was nothing else on. And you know what? If he was your third center, you'd be pretty happy. Like
Yeah.
he's a decent, when he's gotten minutes, he's been quote unquote serviceable.
Right.
But they've got four centers. Like they have $91 million in centers. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand.
Well,
And Towns is now the worst contract in the NBA.
yeah, I think Towns is going to be the one that's going to be moved out of all of that because you can't trade. You're saying you think Towns is the worst. I think Gobert is the worst because Gobert is making like $200 million, right? Or he's making like 40 million a year. You can't
Yeah,
trade
but
him.
there's only 3 years left on his deal.
Yeah, but you can't trade him. You can't trade him, right? Like he's untradeable at this point because of where the league is, and even with Joker winning, and if the NBA being a copycat league, and if teams start valuing more big men again, they're still not going to value Gobert to that extent because
No.
like offensively, it doesn't offer you much, right? It doesn't offer you that much. Like you don't need him for that because that's what he's getting paid for, but he doesn't offer you what you would want out of that center. And then Towns is the opposite. Towns gives you stuff on offense, plays no defense, and then is not always the toughest guy. Very cocky. I don't know if it's like a all bark kind of thing, like the bite's not vicious, but the bark is loud. Like he's becoming that bark guy now, and I'm like, it's a little weird when he's popping up on podcasts and you know just talking trash about other team. Not even talking trash, I should say. Excuse me, but like he's out there and saying like I'm the best shooter and nobody like all this stuff. And I mean everybody has that confidence, but it's just weird that for a guy that we know is not really like that, like he's really barking loud, and it's weird because the way it's going right now, he's not even their best player anymore. So I think if for Minnesota to do that, because I think Nas Reed is good. Like if I
Yeah.
don't if someone play, like he's good, and I think they're gonna try to find a way to move Towns somewhere.
Well,
Because like you
then
said, you,
I'm going to phrase it this way, and this may be the most backwards way to put it. I would rather be stuck with Rudy Gobert's bad contract than Carl Anthony Towns' bad contract.
you make
I know
you,
that's
I'm gonna look at him right now to see what he's making.
yeah. I think the last year of his deal is like 47.
Is
But
he
at the same time, you're going to look at the number the Cat's getting, and you're going to say to yourself, "Is he worth that?"
right?
I look at Washington getting off Beal's contract as like one of the best deals of the summer.
Yeah,
You were paying $200 million to a guy who's made third team All NBA once.
$250 million.
It's bananas. It's
Yeah,
bananas.
for a guy that's at best like If he's like your second or third best player on your team, like that's where you more want him to. At least your second best player, not your best. You don't
He's
want to pay him that much, even if he's your best and you're just treading water until you can figure the next moves out. Cool, but not at 50 million a year.
I was trying to figure out. Well, I'm going to do it again this year. Last year I did like the top 25 players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do it again this year, but it starts with like the question I asked you earlier is who's the best player on the Lakers, right? So then if you sit there, you got to go through like who's the best player on each team. For most teams, it's pretty straightforward, but there's a handful in the league where you're going like think of the Clippers.
Yeah,
Who's their best players? Is it Kawhi? Are you sure? Because he doesn't play a lot. But then again, neither does PG.
yeah,
Are you sure? Like you look at Chicago and Levine with DeMar DeRozan. Everybody loves Levine, but DeMar is the one who shows up every night and puts in work.
yeah.
So there's a handful of those out there. So to go back to what we were talking about with Beal, $250 million for a guy who's maybe a 20 to 25 in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
money.
it's a lot of money. It's a lot
And
of money.
where Towns is probably right in that same thing.
And I'm just looking at his contract right now. Yeah, he gets his contract ends in 2028, and that last year he's making 64 million on a player option, which he's definitely going to accept. He's definitely going to accept. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to make him hard to move, but he's going to be the movable guy if you're looking
Yes.
to do some kind of deal. Because like I said, I like Nas Reed, but I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting how this shakes out. I guess my third one, which I like too, this is a small deal in terms of salary, but I like the move because of how things played out towards the end of the year. But call me crazy. I mean, getting Russell Westbrook on a vet minimum is a great deal because
I
he's going
like
to
that.
overperform that, and he fits in with what those guys do. We didn't get to see a lot of it, but I think his energy is something that they need. Um, I, I know he's not a free agent, but I want to save the player that's targeting himself to go to the Clippers a little later. But I think what he offers, like he came in and he kind of saved his name. The Clippers allowed him to save his name, especially with Tyronn Lue there. And I think trusting that organization for the fact that he's a minimum, like he's signing for the vet minimum. This is something he really fought against the whole time. I think that was probably part of the problem with the Lakers of him not wanting to come off the bench. But he still has value, and to get it, he's going to give you close to triple double stats for $3 million or $4 million. I think that's a good deal.
I like that deal as well. I like it less if James Harden shows up. Because I don't know that would make it even more confusing over there than it could be. We talked about this on your podcast. What are you gonna do? Like both PG and Kawhi are going into player options. You're gonna have Harden on an expiring. You're gonna have Russ. Like this could be the all party town team,
Yeah,
except for Kawhi.
except for Kawhi. But people aren't seeing the fact that too. This is all business, right? Because the
Mhm.
Clippers have a new arena they're opening after next season in Inglewood, right? And you're in LA, you're trying to compete for real estate in that town, especially for entertainment. You're opening a brand new state of the art, stadium or arena. You want to pack that with some stars. So I understand why this rumor is kind of building, but if you're trying to win, it doesn't really make sense because that's not the player you target. If you're gonna lose your depth, Harden is not the guy at this stage to do that for. You know what I mean? And then what are you signing him to?
And what do you need? You need a point guard, but you don't need that kind of point guard.
Yeah, not for that team because like Kawhi and PG, like you know, they're not guys that are gonna run an offense, but the way they handle the ball, like they don't need like once it gets in their hands, you're pretty secure. Like the biggest thing is health. You know what I mean? Like hiring like an extra set of therapists and nutritionists, and like making them mandatory to take at least three C baths a week is probably something that they need to do. But outside of that, I mean, it's health. That's the biggest thing with those guys, right?
Mhm.
Like so I think having somebody there that's already kind of he's kind of made his way in the Clippers already. I think for Westbrook, I think I'm happy for him because for Westbrook for the longest while, I thought the narrative went too far left. I wasn't the biggest Westbrook fan, but then it was like, okay, this is actually starting to get a little disrespectful now. He's not this terrible, and some of it is his fault, yes, but some of it was, especially with like when he was in the Lakers, like this guy was
Oh,
getting blamed for everything, and it was like like he doesn't. I don't think he deserved to be the scapegoat to that degree.
that was a terrible fit.
Yeah, we knew that going in too. Like
That was
everybody
a
knew
terrible
that.
fit.
It was awful. Like we knew that even when they were entertaining the idea, we're like, that's dumb. But like LeBron and those guys want the super team thing, so I don't feel sorry for them. I don't. But at the same time, it's like, Westbrook was under contract. He never asked for any of these trades. He never asked to be traded to Houston. Well, he did. He actually asked to be traded. So I guess Houston was the next best option. He didn't ask to get traded to Washington. He didn't get traded to the Lakers. You know what I mean? So like none of it was a fit. At least that team definitely was not a good fit. But at least him going to the Clippers, it worked. I'm actually pretty surprised that he signed a vet min, but really based on where he's at now in his career, I don't think anybody's going to sign him to big money anyway.
No.
They didn't want those problems either, so he had to play the game. And I think the Clippers is the right spot for him, though. I think it can work. He knows he's not the guy. He knows it's Kawhi, and like
Yeah.
Kawhi's healthy, he's a monster. He's the rising ship that lifts like rising sea that lifts all the boats.
Yeah. I think it's a great deal. $3 million for a guy who can go out on any given night, give you 29, 12, and 12 when one of your stars is hurt, who can carry your team. It's a low risk. And definitely he will do better under the not so bright lights of the Clippers versus the very bright lights of the Lakers.
Right, right.
I mean, he's not going to be the focal point. If PG and Kawhi's injuries are going to be what people talk about, he's in a perfect spot.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect spot. Okay. I'm going to go with a deal and a team who's done better than I thought they would. I like that Phoenix picked up Yuta Watanabe based on how he played with Durant
Mm-hmm.
in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I also like really how Phoenix used the very little money they had to fill out the rest of their roster.
They
Like,
actually surprised me because I think picking up Eric Gordon was kind of shocking. And I mean, and I don't know if did they sign him? Did they sign Bol Bol already? Because that was the next rumor that they were looking to pick
haven't
him up
seen
too.
that yet.
But that was the next rumor that they're looking to pick him up too, which I
Mhm.
think would be. I don't understand why or what's happening behind the scenes as to why he's either not getting the time or getting cut. Like I did not expect him to get waived from Orlando. Like waived, like that to me is like I said, he looks at Chet and he looks at Wembenyama and he wants to put his fist to a wall because he's basically the same player. You know what I mean? But a little more unpolished. But like he sees those guys and is like, why not me? You know what I mean? And for him to get cut, I'm like, I think that would be a good move for Phoenix if and then him also being able to play with and practice with Durant, practice with Booker, practice with Beal, and like all that's gonna help. Not so much Aiden, not so much Aiden, but but everybody else on that team, I think that would actually be a good move. And I mean, if they could utilize him, then yeah, I think you're right. Like I don't disagree with that. I think they filled up the roster as best as they could with the limited space that they had. The Gordon one is underrated though. That's
Well,
another.
they also got Drew Eubanks and Kata Bates Diop, who maybe they played on crappy teams, but they're rotation players who what are they going to play? 15 minutes a game?
Right,
You're paying those other guys $160 million. They're going to play most of the minutes and get most of the shots.
right.
You essentially got really nice band-aids for the rest of your roster.
Hmm. No, you're right.
Luxury band-aids.
Yeah, I think it works for them. I still don't see them winning though, to be honest with you. But they surprisingly came out with some depth. James Jones and stuff. They've done some good in the offseason, but especially with the pressure that the new owners kind of put on that team, where he's basically like, the hell with the luxury tax. Let's spend this money. I'm trying to win a
How
chip right now before I feel like he's on the zombie apocalypse game show, and like maybe he has to, like, if he doesn't win a championship by 2025, he's gonna die. Maybe that's, I don't understand, like, why this interest to, like, go all in now. Like, he's not 80, he's our age. He's our age. He's not
yeah.
80 something years old. Why is he committing to doing all this and just blowing up his future right now? He just
How
got
much
here.
how much fun would have Pat Beverly been on the Suns in just in terms of the media coverage?
It would have been, at this stage, he's more irritant and annoyance to the media and fans, much less the players at this point.
How
So,
how many jokes about Katie's burner accounts would have come out just from him?
I mean, he's still getting roasted now. I don't know if you saw the thing with that comedian that he went at, that he tried to go after, and the comedian went on a 10 minute, or at least a five
No,
minute soliloquy of just destroying everything about him. To the point where Katie had no comeback. That's why you don't go after comedians. But
no, that's
you
not a
know,
good idea.
it's not a good idea. Even if you think the comedian is lame, he will destroy you. So
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't know. I don't understand why KD is so gun ho on this super team thing. Like, it's weird because it's like, you're so great. It's kind of like the LeBron thing for the longest while too. It's like, you're so great. Why is it the dependence on you have to get this third and fourth guy, and it's like, why? Like, why? Like, I don't get it. Like, we know it works, okay. It doesn't work all the time, and where the cap is going now, like, you kind of need depth. You know what I mean?
Oh,
So, like, at
not
this,
you kind of
yeah,
need depth.
you need depth, right?
You need
So
depth.
So going this route, it's like this, and to me, this is what this new cap is designed for: is to take away the option of having the super teams, and if you're gonna do it, you can still do it, but it's gonna cost you.
Well, what becomes problematic is now you can't trade Aiton for depth.
No,
Because of the new cap rules, you have to trade one for one.
good
So
luck.
you can't trade Aiton to Indiana for Buddy Heald and Miles Turner. Doesn't
Right,
work.
right.
Which would be a smart deal, but it's not going to happen. So I don't know. Again, kudos to them for what they did with the rest of their roster. What they did before July 1, I can't speak to. Well, I spoke to it, and it doesn't make any sense to me. But what's your next one?
My next one, um, I wanted to go with James Harden because I know he's not a free agent, and I'm saying this because I had a rant on my on my podcast because I just don't understand, like, the power that he's wielding. It drives me crazy, but we won't get into that. I think the Dylan Brooks one for 20 mil a year for 4 years. That one also isn't confusing for me. I think people are going crazy on this, and to everybody else that expected him to be playing for the Shanghai Sharks, like, relax. Like, this guy was a second team, first team all defense, right? Like,
Mhm.
he made the all defensive team. His shooting splits wasn't the greatest this year, but he's like 25 years old. He's not falling off a cliff. Like, prior to this, like, he was a pretty solid offensive player, and I think he's gonna help Houston at the same time too.
Yeah, you're not bringing that guy in for offense. You're bringing him
Mhm.
in for swagger. You're bringing him in for defense. And he's a guy who can make a three here and there. You're bringing him in to make your team tougher, is
Right.
what you're doing. And they had the money to spend. It's similar to Fred.
Right.
They had the money to spend. This is what they needed. That's the guy that provides it. They went and got him. Good for both sides. Good for Dylan Brooks for getting that money. Good for Houston for getting the guy they needed.
Mhm. Yeah, and like I said, and I've had conversations with friends, and we'll talk about how if the Raptors had a chance to sign Dylan Brooks, like, would you take him? I'm like, a lot of people say no. I say yeah. I think he would have been great for Toronto to like. Toronto needs some of that swagger, that dog. You know what I mean? Like they do need that, right? So at least this team, that the way they're currently constructed, they need a little bit more of those guys, I should say. So him going to Houston with a Van Vliet, I think it's a solid move. I don't think like I thought it was a little weird um, the way Memphis kind of dismissed him, like just right on the outset, like there's no like basically saying there's no way you're bringing this guy back. To announce that was a little weird because he's kind of the one that kind of restarted the energy for grit and grind, like the new version of grit and grind. Like people forget when they were young and Iguodala didn't want to come there in 2019, 2020. He was the guy that was like, "Oh, you don't want to be here? Get the fuck out of here." You know what I mean? Like we're gonna be those dogs. But I liked it. Like when he did that, I was like, you know what? I like that.
I
I
think
like
what
that. He kind of set the tone with those comments, and everybody. I'm
what
not saying he's a leader, but I'm just saying that everybody kind of followed that. Like, yeah, we are Memphis, and you saw how their characters. Now, mind you, they needed veterans, so I like their moves
mhm,
that they did too. Like in terms of getting smart and getting certain guys that like Derrick Rose to kind of mentor some of these guys. Like they needed some
mhm.
vets, so it kind of got under control there. But it wasn't his fault. I don't think it was totally his fault either.
Sometimes things just run their course. I
Mhm.
would say the mistake Memphis made was not maintaining any leverage in a sign and trade.
Right,
You've already told me you don't want the guy. So why am I going to operate a sign and trade? What's the benefit for
right,
me? I could just go sign him, you know?
exactly.
Whereas had you not come out and said that, but at the same time, I feel he did do certain things in that playoff run that myself as a coach would be like, "Hey dude,
Yeah,
maybe you went a little
dial it
too
back.
far."
Hmm. Yeah,
You know the guy you could just called old?
and,
He
and
took
not
that personal.
and not so much that, but just the way he finished off the season. Like he did a lot more talking than his
Playing.
play. Yeah, than the play dictated. So don't get me wrong. As much as I'm saying like I think that's not a bad deal. Like yeah, he did deserve some of the flack, and you can't talk trash and you win, and then when you lose, you can't find you. Like nobody likes people like that, right? So we deserve some of that too. Like you can't run and hide when the lights are on brightest because you talked the game that your game didn't cash at that particular moment, right? But going forward, I mean, look, he's on the Team Canada roster. You're gonna like him on Team Canada. You're gonna like him on, like I think like honestly, I think the deal wasn't as bad a deal as people thought. Like people keep thinking this guy's going to the G League and going overseas, and I'm like just
No.
relax, like calm down. Like he's not that bad.
Yeah. The demand was there. I think in the moment I was probably sort of like, "Ooh, he just cost himself a lot of money."
Mhm.
But in the end he didn't.
No,
Because
probably
your
made more.
body, well, they probably looked at the body of work overall and said, "This is what we need, and we're gonna not gonna have recency bias play into what we're gonna do as a decision for our team with in terms of what Houston did."
Yeah, and
All
and then
right,
on top of that too, like if Houston didn't sign him, I mean, there was strong rumors until the little sweepstakes got in that Miami wanted him, and I think
somebody
he would have been a great Heat player. I don't know what they would have
somebody
signed him
was
to.
gonna get him.
Yeah, like that would have been like if he landed on Miami, everybody would be like, it's kind of like when the Spurs will get somebody back in the day, or when the Patriots used to get a certain player, and you're like, oh god, because he was available for everybody. And then they got him, and you're like, oh, why do we let them get him? You know what I mean? And I
Of
think if
course.
Miami, yeah, and I think if Miami did it, it would have been the same thing. Like, oh my God, Riley did it again. You know?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Okay, for my last one, I'm kind of trying to figure out here what I want to play with because there were a lot of small deals that I liked. I liked DiVincenzo to the Knicks. I liked Struess to Cleveland. What I'm going to go with, though, is the most recent, which is Grant Williams ending up in Dallas. I had actually thought he was going to end up in San Antonio.
mm,
And that was my, like, ooh, he'd be a good, bodyguard for Wemby. He could play in a small lineup with him. But again, I like him in Dallas too, right? They need some toughness.
it's a
He can
toughness.
stretch the floor.
Yeah,
He can give them a little bit more offensive punch than what Dallas already has.
yeah.
We'll see. We'll see what Dallas can add, and then you know wasn't for or against the Kyrie signing, but at the same time, they were kind of handcuffed. They had to sign him.
You gave up all of that for him in the off season. You can't make that kind of deal and then not sign him back. Like you're basically when you made that deal, you're basically committing to him. You know, even if you have to trade him later or even waive him if things get out of control. Like that's the card you dealt. Like people, I don't know. And I know he was trying to say like, yo, he will take the minimum contract and go to Phoenix and all that stuff, but we knew he wasn't going to do that. And based on the shoe deal, you know, he's not leaving money on the table to that degree. So, I
No.
mean, yeah, I'm indifferent about the Kyrie thing. I don't think the him and Doncic that pairing isn't as bad as people think, but they just have to put the right players around them. And Grant Williams, to your point, is a start. Like in terms of a role player, like they need more lengthy guys that can play defense, that can hit open shots, and especially with somebody like Grant Williams who has deep playoff experience. You know what I mean? Like even look, I know everybody got on him because of that he woke up Jimmy Butler for that one game, but even in that one game, he was pretty solid. Yeah, Jimmy Butler got the best of him, but you know what? Like, not a lot of players on Boston was doing a lot that night either. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
so to that point, it's like I thought he probably should have even played more in that series. To be honest with you, So I think on a team like this, I think he does work because he provides a certain level of experience, toughness, character. Like I think he's a solid player, and I don't know what they actually. Let me see because I have the list here of what they signed guys to, but yeah, 4 years, 53 million. Like saying getting the same money essentially as Austin Reeves, that's okay. That's fine.
Austin
That
Reeves, Dante DiVincenzo. There's a whole bunch of
right.
guys who got in and around that kind of money, and
Yeah.
they got better. They got better.
Yeah. They still got more moves to make though. Don't get me wrong. I do
Uh,
shout out to Omax because him getting over there too. I think he's a solid player and he's gonna get some time. I think he's gonna get some time over there too because they need length and athleticism and stuff too. So he's gonna get some minutes.
it was so
It's a good move.
weird to watch s- somebody who you're familiar with, like have someone drafted in their family. I'm sitting
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of Ontario watching this kid who I've never met before, and just because I know his parents and played with his uncle, I was just like so excited for them. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I've never met this kid in my life. Why am I excited? But it was awesome. It was just awesome to
Yeah.
see, right? Knowing his parents, knowing his uncle, like I played with his uncle. It's like, wow, crazy how something can like that can happen
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah. And I mean, we're in that. It's funny, like at this stage of our lives, we're in that space where we're watching, like, that
Mm,
for me, it started with like, when I used to come to Toronto all the time, you know, I've known David Joseph, Corey Joseph's dad, since I was like 10 years old, 12 years old, because of my older brothers. And every summer I would come in and, spend the summer here and, he'd play in tournaments with my brothers. And, and then when I went to Eastern Commerce, he's I think he was a junior coach. So you're spending a lot of time with these guys. And then, every once in a while he's bringing his son into the gym, shooting little hoops on the side. Who's to think that
Mhm.
20 years later, this guy is going to be his son, the same one that you're chasing off the court is going to be the one, you know, being an NBA veteran. You know what I mean? So, like, we're at
Crazy.
that stage now where it's like, and it's not coming from the States. It's coming from where
No.
we are in Canada. So I think that
Yeah.
that is really cool. I mean, that's where we are right now. There's more Montrealers coming. You know what I mean? And the
Oh,
pipeline is here, man. It's here. It's here.
it's
It's here to
crazy.
stay. It's not going anywhere. So I think that's great. But to your point, the Grant Williams signing that's a good move. It's I think it's a good move for them. They still got to make some more, but who else did they drafted? They drafted I'm losing track of his name right now, but the big man, Derek
Lively out of
Lively.
Duke.
Derek Lively. Yeah. So they need, like I said, they need athleticism. They need defense. They definitely need some defense and toughness. So that move works. Especially for that
Mhm.
contract, it works. Because look, the way I see it is, you put the right guys around Luca. You know what I mean? Say what you want about Luca, but he doesn't need a lot to go far. You know what I mean? Like, so
No.
if you can put some decent players, some defenders, and some shooters around, like you had Dinwiddie, you had Jalen Brunson before, but I mean, Kyrie doesn't play make. I mean, Kyrie's special. You're more worried about the off the court stuff than you are with Kyrie, right? Than you are in between the lines. So, if he's doing this thing on that side of it, they're both going back and forth. If they have the right support system around them, I mean, that can go far. Now, do you trust Jason Kidd to be the one to hold that down? I think that's part of the question too. But I mean, it's a good start if you can put the right guys around those two. I mean, that's the point of it. Like right now, where the league is going now, and we keep, this is like the theme, the thesis of basically like our pods the last couple of weeks. But like, with the cap space the way it is, having two superstars and some depth around is where it's gonna go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's where it's gonna go. If you have like two really strong stars, and then you support them with a deep bench, you're gonna go far. And like I said, we watched. I mean, just last year, Doncic was in the conference finals, cooking
Mhm.
guys, right? So, and I mean that team was him and just a bunch of strong role players until Jalen Brunson showed you he had more in New York, but everybody was a strong role player, and then you had the one star, and look how far that went,
Yeah.
right? So now you're having
100%.
two, just fill them up with some more depth. But like Grant Williams is a good start.
Yeah, for sure. All right. What's your last one here, Calvin?
My last one is, I'm probably gonna blow up your game right now. But I think the thing that's for me, what it's kind of messing with the off season a little bit too in terms of free agency signings is, I mean, the pool wasn't strong to begin with, but I think that cloud that is this Dame Lillard situation is kind of hanging over the whole offseason. Like,
Mhm.
until we know what's gonna happen, it's like certain moves can't get made. You know what I mean? Like, the I guess the top free agents of this year, like I said again, which wasn't a strong class to begin with. Um, most of those guys, the ones that are going to sign to big money, have pretty much signed at this point. But like, until Dame makes a move, and I know he's trying to angle for Miami. I still believe there's better teams, or a couple better teams, that he should consider. If Miami doesn't work out, that I think he will be just as successful. Um, but I think that's the biggest thing that's hanging over the whole offseason, over everything. And it's probably the most important transaction, basically, a waiting transaction of this whole offseason, more than any free
Yeah.
agency. It's Dame, right?
Well, thank God he didn't do it July 1st.
Right.
Everything would have been frozen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
So
true.
he might have maybe been better off trying to make the deal or do it right between the draft and free agency,
hmm
because then there would have been more chips in play, more
Right.
chance for a sign and trade and all of that.
Yep.
I could be wrong. I'm just a guy in his garage talking about basketball. But once they drafted Scoot, the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
What else was there to bring in? You would have had to make a lot of moves to make that roster make sense.
Yeah.
and I think he's just a loyal guy who didn't want to pull the trigger, but realized, look, it's not going to change unless I say this.
And he's 32,
And
33 years old, or he's going on to
yeah,
be 33. You know,
yeah.
like he's made a ton of money. He's got way more money to come. He's got like 4 years left on his deal at least, right? Or at least 3 or 4 years left on his deal. And like, yeah, like go try to get a ring now. Like it's funny because you always hear
Well,
Garnett. Garnett always says like the biggest regret is that he should have pulled the trigger sooner, on leaving
yeah,
Minnesota, right? Because by the time he got to Boston, thankfully he won a chip, but then pretty much after that, he wasn't the same guy. His body broke down and he wasn't the same.
yeah.
And then
Well,
by the time they started meeting Miami, like at that point, he was on the other side of the hill.
where my thing is though with that comment is, what team other than Miami, maybe Philly, what other team is he going to ring chase with? It's
At
those
least, at least,
two.
at least right now, yeah. Unless something else
Yeah.
opens up in the
Well, I mean,
future.
you get into February, what? There's going to be another team with the roster assets and the positioning, the other superstar to make it happen. I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but those deals, like him going to the Clippers, that doesn't make any sense.
No,
I
if
don't
he, if
care how much money Steve Ballmer has.
yeah, and I mean, you heard the Spurs at one point. Like, I'm not saying that was a rumor, but they're saying
Yeah.
because of terms of cash space. But that's not gonna, we're not sure what Wemby's gonna be just yet in terms of We know he's gonna be great, but we don't know if he's gonna be ready to be a championship player in year one.
Well,
You know what I mean? Like,
and you heard Utah. Like, is
yeah,
Dame going to be super pumped to go to Utah?
no. Because if you're going to leave
No.
Portland, you're going to leave for something that's kind of opposite. You're going to leave for a bigger market, more reach in terms of opportunities off the court, that kind of stuff. But like all that's going to have to correlate into who he is.
Yeah.
Like I know he's never really chased that, but if you're going to leave Portland, you're not going to another small market team. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
and not one who's just as far from a chip as you are.
right, exactly. Like I think the Sixers. I think he would be legendary if he goes to Philly, man. Like I really wish he would consider Philadelphia, but the Harden thing kind of messes that up too, though. So that's the problem, right? But I think
Yeah. I feel like the NBA
there
has
could
a
be
way
like a
of
three.
making things
Yeah, there
happen.
could be like a three-way deal or a four-way deal for that to kind of everything to work out. But I would love to see him beside Embiid because those games where Embiid doesn't play the greatest, because Embiid, and I love Embiid, but I had to really look at his stats, like especially when that Boston series was going on, and he had another injury-filled postseason. He finished very weakly, in that second round. And I'm looking at his playoff stats, and they're not strong. He's not one of those players that plays better in the playoffs historically, right? So a
Well,
guy like
Jokic,
a guy like Lillard kind of like hides that. You know what I mean? Because that's a guy that does play well in the playoffs.
well,
That's not afraid of the spotlight.
you need a guy who can create a shot from the perimeter. A guy who can take the ball, bring it up, and make something happen. When you're a five, you can't do that unless your name is Nikola Jokic,
Right.
and he's a unicorn of unicorns. And I hate using that term, but he's a savant who is, how many times in the playoffs, how many times in basketball in any year have you watched a guard get a rebound and throw an outlet pass to their five man?
I know.
Never, unless they were like 10 years old.
Right.
They didn't know what they were doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
So let's throw that one to the side. Embiid is stuck in an environment where the any possession he's going to get, everything's going to be loaded to him.
Hmm.
More so because he's going to be closer to the basket.
Right.
So Dame would be a huge relief. And the unfortunate thing is the whole Harden thing didn't work out. We all know because Harden just doesn't perform well in the clutch.
Yeah.
You know, another stinker this year. So unless you're a team that really wants to pile up regular season wins and isn't in a championship position, James Harden isn't on my radar.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So
And Harden's a guy too that's like, at this point, what is it you're expecting? What is it you want at this point of your career? Because even the rumors of, and I know this is more for leverage, but I never believed the Houston thing because it never made sense. But I'm like, but even if it did make, even if both sides were interested, why would you at this stage of your career, like you have properties in Houston, you have businesses in Houston, that's still going to thrive even if you're not there at this point. It's thriving while you're not there now. In the
Yeah.
summertime, you can still do camps, you can still do events, festivals, all the things that he does in the off season in Houston. I know he's loved in Houston, and if you're okay with doing that, but like, what is he expecting? Even if the dream scenario was he went to Houston and Houston signed him to a combination of Van Vliet and Dylan Brooks's money, right? Even if they signed him to some big money, like I think he's going back there to be the same guy that holds the ball for 19 out of the 24 seconds under the shot clock, and he's going to pile up stats. The only problem is the regime's different, the players don't match up, and the coach definitely is not going for that. And he's going to want you to play defense. So where does that fit into Harden's plans? Harden is not a guy that you can coach that hard. So and Udoka is a guy that coaches you hard, at least in this the history that he's shown you so far in the league. So
I
none of that was going to
I,
work out anyway.
I think with Harden, if you want to see what's going to happen to Harden, look at what happened to Russ,
Right.
and that's the future. You know,
Yeah.
he's 33 years old right now. What do you think his next deal is? Do you think his next deal is a 4-year deal?
No.
Like
He,
the deal Chris Paul made with Phoenix that was like 30 mil, what was it, 3 years for
I
a
think it was
hundred
four
or
mils,
something like that.
120. Yeah, I think it was four, but I think the last year wasn't guaranteed.
The last year was not guaranteed, and only half of the second to last year was guaranteed.
Right.
So, there's not a lot of big money on the table for a guy who scores a lot of points in the regular season and doesn't make you better when it matters. So
And,
I don't understand why Philly's so keen to keep him.
but I think part of it too is you also can't lose him for nothing either, right? And I mean that's probably what's gonna happen because you took the player option. But and we know this at this stage. Yeah, it's not gonna. I mean they were up 3-2 in this series. They proved that like if they couldn't do it at that stage, and it wasn't so much their game because that game six was disgusting because Boston was basically giving them the game. They gave them the game for them to take, and then it was like, with like 5 minutes to go, they were just like, okay, you don't want it, fine, okay, like you guys will take it then, and then Tatum woke up. But like for that most of that game, they were like especially Tatum, they were trying to give Philly that game. They were trying to make sure that them and Miami meet in the conference finals, and it was like it's like him and Embiid. It's like it's almost like they didn't want it. It was just a weird energy they had. It was like the way they
Yeah,
played that game six and game seven, but especially game six, it was like they were playing Detroit in January. They're just going through the motions, and it was weird because I'm like, you guys are one game away from going to the conference finals. Like, why aren't you playing harder? It was weird. You know what I mean?
it's
So your point, it's not like we know at this stage it's probably not going to work, but like if you let him go, like unless you're going to get some good assets from, which is, I mean, which is possible. But to your point, what do you like? You know, I asked this before too. Would you be okay signing him to Van Vliet money? I'm not. I'm not giving him that. I'm not giving him a 40 million a year. Hell no. And he's going to be
ye-
34 when the season starts with all
yeah,
that mileage. Hell no.
and I'm putting team options. I'm putting games played. Like I think next summer when he's a free agent, if he doesn't, the team he gets traded to doesn't give him an
It's
extension.
going to be a cold summer. It's going to be
Yeah,
a cold summer. Yeah.
yeah, because I
It's going to
mean,
be a
what do
cold
you?
summer.
The cap's even tighter. So you're going to
Hell,
look at James Harden and say, "Is this guy really going to put me over the top?" Unless you're a team that's got cap space and you're bottom of the pack, and you're like, unless you know who you are, you're Washington. That's who you
and who
are.
knows the Washington party scene is chocolate city for a reason, bro.
You
So
know
maybe that might entice him at this stage and be like, you know what, I could
who
I
knows?
could party it up for the next couple of years.
You're gonna have to Google the
Let-
quality of strip clubs in Washington to figure out whether that's a destination for
It's not bad.
him.
It's not bad. But
Hmm.
I don't think it's Houston, but it's not bad. But but I don't know. Like I said, with him, it's going to be. You're right. I think it's going to be. It's a good point. I think it's going to be a cold summer. It's going
Yeah.
to be a cold summer. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be. It's going to be interesting to see where that's going to go. I don't know. It's a cold summer, man. But I think at this stage, it's like I just don't understand the power that he's trying to wield at this stage of his career. And it's like, do you think that nobody else sees that it's kind of like smoke and mirrors? Like you're trying to angle to go to the Clippers. Like why would Morey do that at this point? Like why would he send you there to get what back? You know what I mean? And what third team is
Yeah.
going to give them like another star? Because Maxi's good, but I don't know if Maxi's ready to be the second best player on a championship contending team. I don't know if he's there
No,
yet. You know what I mean? He's not there yet, at least to me, right? Like, so unless you're going to get a guy of that caliber back, because right now with Embiid, especially with his history, you kind of have to win now. You know what I
but you
mean?
have no leverage. You have no leverage. What are you going to get them to throw in the deal? They have to desperately want him. And it doesn't seem that way. Like these are smart people who it's like the Dame in Miami deal. There's really only
Right.
one deal to make, maybe two. And
Yeah.
Portland's just like, yeah, you gotta put more in the deal. No.
And
Okay,
then
we'll
too
wait.
yeah, and then on top of that too, when you look at it, right? Like, is he going to sit out if he doesn't get traded? Is he going to do the thing where he just fails out of the city? Like that's going to be the third team he does that to. He showed
Yeah,
up because people forget. Like he showed up to Houston out of shape, and he showed up late to camp because he was partying in Vegas the first time, and then he basically failed his way out of Brooklyn the second time when he wanted to get traded and it wasn't going down right away,
yeah.
and then he just got weird. Is that what you want your legacy to be? Like you're going to do that for a third time? Even doing it twice is kind of like putting a stain on your name. To do that a third time, like these guys really don't care.
I think in one of Pat Beverly's comments where he talked about how like 50% of basketball players, NBA players don't love basketball. He goes, but some of the guys I know who are the best at it are one of
Mm.
those. I think Harden's one of those guys.
There's one of those guys he's talking about. Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably right. Because you don't do that. Like you don't see a player. You might see a player do that maybe once, like a star
Or
player
maybe
do that maybe once.
or maybe he just loves to hoop in the sense that like I want to drop buckets, but I'm really not that competitive. Like it's about me, it's not about us.
Mhm.
Maybe
Right.
that's it. I don't know. But
And and
it's real dichotomy between him and Dame because I think Dame, no matter what, I feel like Dame will play.
right.
Deal or no deal, come start of the season,
Hmm. He'll show
Dame
back
will
up in
play.
Portland and in shape and
You
ready to
know?
go, and you'll be ready to lead
Yeah.
until they trade him. I agree with that. I
Yeah.
don't I don't see. There's no like. I would be if listen, if Lillard does what Harden's been doing in terms of wanting to like the way he wants to leave, like if he follows that blueprint, I will be completely stunned. I don't see him doing that. I don't think that's in his character. I don't see him doing that. And then all the goodwill that he's built in Portland, and he really does value that. I can't see him risking that all, being like, I'm gonna show up to camp out of shape. I'm gonna fight, with the media. I'm not gonna help the rookies.
No.
F Scoot. You know what I mean? I would have talked shit to Chauncey Billups, and we're gonna get into a big argument, and I'm gonna be like a malcontent of the team. I can't see him doing that. That's just not in his character. But
No.
but the thing is to give Harden some I guess a little bit of love. He did play well with Embiid last year, at least in terms of setting Embiid up for being the MVP. That's 20 and 10. Like that's not like he's one of the few players to win a
He's
scoring title and an assist title. Like
yeah.
that's saying something. You know what I mean? But like
He's good.
yeah, he's a good player. He's a good player. That's why I'm like where he's at now, the way he handles the ball, the usage rate that he gets. Why is he just staying where he's at? I don't understand. He's got people's in Philly that support him. The ownership supports him. the management supports him. Embiid doesn't want him to go. I don't understand. And like I said, what other team is he going to be James Harden on? It's not going to be the Clippers, like where he wants to go. It's not going to be LA. It's not going to be the Clippers. What other team is going to go and do that? There's no other team that's going to allow him to do this. That's willing to still pay him some money.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
I don't understand that whole thing. But I think, but to circle back to the point I was making though, I think the Dame Lillard thing is hanging over this whole offseason.
The rest of it for sure. The moment he announced I want to get traded, I think I put out a message on social somewhere. I was like, "All right, free agency is now on pause."
And maybe for a while,
Yeah,
and
I think
maybe
the only deal that happened since then was the Grant Williams deal. I
right,
think.
right, exactly. Like everything's on hold until that gets moved. Like all the other transactions, even down to Toronto with Siakam, I think. And you are hearing rumors too that like Siakam might be the next person to get moved. So that may still happen too. So he might be the exception to the rule. But if not, then it's everything's on hold. Like
Yeah,
until you know what
100%.
happens. Yeah, like you don't know what teams are going to counter and be like, oh well, Miami got this. Well, now we're going to get this player. We don't know. We're not going to know until the deal gets done. But like I
Yeah.
said, to me, I kind of wish he opened it up to at least a couple of teams. I think just like Miami doesn't. I mean, Portland now doesn't have the leverage to like they're gonna have to add a third team. Like what Miami has
Well,
to offer, it's like really Hero and some like low first round picks is not going to be enough.
but nobody has it. Nobody else has anything to offer either. That's a good fit.
Yeah, like
So you
Brooklyn would be one too because they have some assets, but they're not ready to. They're not going to win a title if he gets there immediately. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
you're
even
gonna
with the guy
pay
to the
him.
left.
I like the team that Brooklyn has. Why? What do I need Dame for?
Yeah, and well, I mean, I was going to say with the
So I could be a 3 instead of a 4 in the
right
playoffs.
because I was gonna say too that like after the fiasco that happened with the big thing that they just shipped everybody out from, they probably like the way this team is right now. They went back to where they were in 2019. They're like a
Yeah,
plucky team that people are gonna enjoy. People are gonna enjoy how hard the guys play. We're gonna, you know, fans are gonna love them. League passes, they're gonna be one of the favorite teams on League Pass to watch. You get Mikal
hmm,
Bridges, all of a sudden is like a
love them.
like T Mac light all of a sudden. Like
Yeah,
where did that come from? So they just signed Cam Johnson. They got some players. Like they have the assets to do it and still be pretty good. Like I would like to see him in New York too. Like Brooklyn wouldn't be a bad move, but I think he would be a legend in Philly, man. Like I think with what the history of what Philly has, and like they have that deep NBA history. They haven't won a title in 40 years. Like the way he plays right now, come on, man. They love guys who play like this. They
yeah.
love Iverson. They love Barkley, Moses Malone. Like they love guys that just they're about their business and they play hard. Like they love it.
This when you wave Russell Westbrook off after a game winner, man, that's got to be one of my all time
Oh,
favorites. When I watched that series, my respect for Dame changed because you heard all the chatter going up to it between him and Westbrook.
mm-hmm.
The big difference was Dame guarded Westbrook.
Yeah,
Westbrook didn't guard Dame.
right.
So I was like, oh, that's what makes him different. Not that he's a great defensive player. He did such a great
He
job,
took the
but
challenge.
he was like, no, man, this is you and me.
Mm-hmm.
So
He took the
yeah, I think
challenge.
he's just somebody you got a lot of respect for in all ways. So
But I just imagine like him in front of that Philly crowd. I just think it would just be
crazy.
amazing. Oh, it'd be amazing if him and Embiid played together. And I think they would be like a championship contender. Like
Oh,
you'd be
I,
afraid to play them outside of like
yeah,
a Milwaukee. Like everybody else would and even Milwaukee too. Like it would be nerve wracking to play against them.
you have players who were built not just mentally for the playoffs, but the style of play.
Yeah,
You think of Jimmy, you think of Giannis, you think of Luca. They are built for that.
right.
right? And Dame is one of those guys.
Absolutely.
So, look at once you get deep in the playoffs, you're only playing 6 or 7 or 8 guys. You're not playing 10.
Absolutely.
So it'll depend on what's left around them. But yeah, I think Dame and Philly would be super fun.
Yeah, I would love to. I wish he was open to it. Maybe he might. You never know what's going to happen in the next couple of months. Maybe it
He
might.
doesn't have a no trade clause.
Yeah. So they don't. Portland doesn't really have to do anything. You know what I mean? At
No,
least not right now. Like they got to get the best deal. What's best for them? I mean, like, and I was saying this on my last podcast of what I put out today, but I'm like, you're not going to get full value when in these trades. You never get the full value back for a superstar, but you
never.
got to get something close, which is assets. You got to get assets and at least an up and coming star player if you can, plus assets. That's the best thing you can get. If you can't get both, you gotta
Yeah,
get at least some deep first round, at least 3 or 4 first round picks, some pick swaps. Like
I th- I think if they didn't just draft Scoot or already have Anthony Simons, Tyler Hero would be part of that deal. Like
yeah,
the deal would be done. But what it's a redundant
player. That's
trade.
the problem,
I
right?
already got 2 of those.
Right.
I need a different like. Give me something else.
Yeah.
But they don't have anything else.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So
So I think that's the part that makes it interesting. But I mean, until this Dame deal gets done, I think everything's kind of on hold. But man, we're just waiting. We're just waiting for that to come down the pipeline. But we need it. I think we need change. Like the league is about to be very parity centric in the next two. Actually, I'm gonna say 2 to 5 years because it's happening right now. Where it's already happened this season. It's gonna happen more going forward. You're going to see lots of players getting swapped out, and we're going to be shocked at certain trades, and everybody's going to try to get under the cap. But more teams are going to have a chance now.
yes,
As this playoffs reflected, more teams are going to have a chance now that you think. You know what? You know
one
what?
hundred percent.
Here's one more. Here's one more. Which I don't know if they would do this because they want to probably get him out the conference. But does Sacramento have enough pieces to? Or that's no, they probably don't either, right? No, actually, no, they don't.
They probably do, but you're it's
You're
a
gutting
one
your
for one
core.
deal. Are
Yeah,
you getting better to the point that you're ahead? You're just getting older.
yeah, yeah. So it doesn't really work. That's like I said. To me, I think Philly would be the best place to go, or even over Miami. But I understand the infrastructure Miami has. So, but I think people like I don't know. I just feel like Philly would be a great place for them to go.
I feel like I'm gonna jump on what you're saying, and then we're gonna get out of here.
Yeah,
Philly would be better from the standpoint of after the season, Tobias Harris's contract comes off the books, and you have more cap flexibility.
right.
Miami, you have zero cap
Zero. Right
flexibility.
for the future, exactly. Because Bam and Jimmy they're on some lengthy contracts.
Well, Bam's contract isn't so tough. It's that you're going to throw all 3 of those together.
Yeah,
Like those 3 contracts together are going to be $150 million.
I know.
I mean, you're already in the luxury tax with those 3
Yeah,
contracts.
basically. For ownership that doesn't like to go into the luxury tax,
Yeah.
right?
So
So
you better be on it to win the chip with that roster.
yeah, but a great point about Tobias Harris though, because you're right, because like that opens up the possibility of maybe signing maybe like a couple more guys, and that could be enough.
Yeah.
That could swing a title. That could swing a
You
title. Like
know,
we
or you say, look, I'm going to give you Harden and Tobias Harris on expirings, and you're going to ship me Nurkic and Dame, and then I'm going to ship Nurkic to somebody else, and that's what it's going to be.
right.
And you're going to have to give Portland would probably have to give up another asset because you're shipping over 70 million in cap space, almost 80 million in cap space
Yeah.
with those 2 deals.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to give more than that.
Yeah.
Portland would have to make that deal better.
Yeah. Like you're right. You're right.
But again, they're not in that mode. Cap space doesn't matter to them because they aren't a free agent destination.
Yeah.
If you're a free agent destination, great. If you're the Clippers, great. Ship me the 80 million in expirings.
Yeah.
But you're Portland. You don't sign free agents. You draft.
Yeah, exactly. And
So
and they don't draft that great. Like in the last little while,
you know,
not including Scoot and even Simons, but they don't draft.
you know if you look at it, there aren't a lot of teams that draft great.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a
Not
crapshoot,
many.
man. It's a crapshoot.
Well, I mean, there's moments where you're just going, even during the draft, you're looking at teams going, really? Like, how can you guys get it right? But that's it for me. Okay, Calvin, I want to say thank you for doing this.
Nah, man, I appreciate you having me on, man. Anytime, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Calvin, South Shore Ave. I'll be sure to make a bigger plug at the beginning.
Yes. You want me to plug it right now?
Nobody's listening anymore, Calvin. We went on for too long.
All right, sir. Thank you.